Good morning, and welcome to our live stream at Blunt Community Church. A special welcome to first-time viewers.
Because of you, I freely good morning, BCC. Thank you so much for joining us on this Sunday morning. I love that video. I think it is so simple and so cool, and that is going to be a series called When Pigs Fly that we're going to begin in 2 Sundays. So in 2 weeks, we're going to begin that series, When Pigs Fly, and it is about miracles. So and I think it's around 5 weeks long, we're going to look at different miracles and different attributes of God and talk about how they apply nowadays. And that's also a series when we're going to have some guest speakers. So I'm excited about that. That's 2 weeks, but in 1 week from Sunday is Memorial Weekend, and we're going to have a special Memorial Day message. So next week, Memorial Weekend, and then in 2 weeks, we're going to begin a new series, When Pigs Fly. And then this afternoon, I will be sending an email to our church family, and that is going to be the update of the plan of where we're going in the next couple Sundays. So I sent an update on Friday, and that was really a non-update update, but we usually send them on Friday, so I wanted to send something to you. This afternoon is a little bit longer, and there's a lot of details, and it shares the plan and some of those things. So make sure that if you want to know that you're going to get it in the email, we're not going to put it on social media right now. And if you're not on our email, you can go to our homepage or the landing page on our website, and there's a place where you can sign up for our email. So a lot of exciting things going on. One thing that happened to me this week, that I was in a Zoom call with a bunch of pastors from the Southeast United States, and the pastor that Pastor Kenny and Zach went and visited, his name is Justin, in the Chattanooga area a few weeks ago, and they showed a video during one of the worship service. He was on that call, and we were kind of talking about different things with the church and all, and of course his church is in that area where the tornado hit, and he got real emotional, and he said in front of this whole group, and he ended up wanting me to thank you guys again. I know that Kenny thanked you when he went down there, but that was at the beginning. That's when Kenny and Zach represented Blount Community Church and gave them many thousands of dollars to help in that area. And he said, Jeff, he thanks Blount Community Church for the money and said, Jeff, I want you to tell them thank you again, because you can't imagine what it's like to represent the church, to be a pastor in this area that is devastated, and to find people who are hurting and have a desperate need, and to be able to give them, and we gave them a bunch of gift cards to different places to get food and necessary items and things. But he says, you don't know how it makes me feel, not just personally, but how it represents the church to be able to love somebody else in the name of Jesus during this time. So they're not only dealing with all the repercussions of the virus they're still dealing with, and we're not in this area, but it's close to us. So thank you again, BCC, for your generosity. A pastor in Chattanooga, and you didn't know, but right now he's able to minister, to do things, and his church it needs help, and we help them. You guys help them. So thank you again that we're continue to be able to be ministers and love on people during this time. I'm Pastor Jeff, one of the pastors here. I'm so glad that you joined us. I'm going to pray, and then we're going to continue on with some more worship songs, and then we'll get into the message this morning. So would you bow your head if you want to in your home and close your eyes, and we'll pray together. God, we do thank you as a church that is scattered all around, not just Blount County, but even all over the Southeast and different parts of the United States. And we thank you that the church is strong and can do creative and wonderful things. And God, you have sustained the church. You told us through Peter that nothing is going to prevent the church from accomplishing the mission that you set forth. And we want to be about that, God. And this morning we meet in homes and in different places to worship, to be encouraged, to get a word from you, to fellowship, some online. And so, God, we ask your blessings on this time. And as we worship through song, however we do that in our homes, I pray that you would bless that. And God, I pray that you would also speak to us when we look at this idea of uncertainty. And you would let that man that followed you called Peter, the Apostle Peter, to teach us a lesson about being certain in life. So we look forward to a great hour, and we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you.
In these times of uncertainty, it's so good to know salvation is here. I don't care be the center, be my soul, be my life, Jesus. Jesus. Be my hope, be my song, Jesus. Be the fire in my heart, be the wind in these sails, be the reason that I live, Jesus, Jesus. Jesus, be my vision, be my path, be my guide. Jesus, be the fire in my heart, be the wind in these sails, be the reason that I live, Jesus. Be my source, be my life, Jesus. Be my hope, be my song, Jesus. Be my path, be my guide, Jesus.
He was first named Simon, but Jesus named him Peter. He was a simple fisherman off the west coast of the Sea of Galilee in northern Israel. He was strong, independent, and had a direct, impetuous way about himself. He was married and lived a fairly normal life until Jesus said, "Follow me." Peter would become one of the 12 disciples. He was among Jesus' closest friends and boldly proclaimed his lordship. He was also first to cut and run and was first to deny Christ when he was crucified. He was the first that Christ appeared to after he had risen from the dead, and Peter would be the first to raise his voice and preach on the day of Pentecost. His first letter to the churches in Pontus, Galatia, Cappadocia, Asia, and Bithynia around AD 63. His letter is intended for Christians who journey through this world as aliens and strangers to find their hope in Christ alone. All of these are found in 1 Peter.
Well, we're going to talk about Peter today, but before we do, I want to tell you about a time when I was younger in life. My friend had a boat, and one day he called me and said, "You want to go fishing?" And I said, "Yeah," because anytime somebody invites me to go fishing, I try to go. And so we woke up early in the morning and drove down to the lake and it wasn't pitch dark, but the sun is starting to come up, so it was kind of dark. And we backed the boat into the water and pulled the truck out. And I pulled the truck out and came back down there, and he's trying to start the boat so I can hear it turn and trying to get it going. And this was early in the fishing season, I guess, in early spring. And I didn't want to say anything to him like, "Hey, dude, what kind of boat you got? I mean, what's the deal here?" But it took him maybe 15 or 20 minutes, and he got the thing started. And I remember having this little bit of reservation in my mind. I was like, "Hey, is this thing gonna be okay?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, it's early in the season. It's first time. It'll run fine." And sure enough, it cruised, and we went a couple miles away and started fishing. and you shut the motor off and you put a trolling motor on, and the trolling motor lets you kind of put around the banks, and got around lunchtime, noontime, and the sun was up, and we were gonna head back, and he tries to start the motor again, and obviously the thing doesn't start. So he sits there and tries for maybe 30 minutes to start the thing, and I'm like, man, we need to do something else. And so we do the trolling motor, and so that we put the trolling motor back in there, and we go with the trolling motor for like a mile or two. And if you want to know what that's like, it would be like getting on it in first gear and driving to Knoxville. So you're done doing what you want to do, you had your fun, and it's just agony. You got this little bitty propeller thing that's taking you 1 mile an hour back to where you came from. And I was like, man, it was fun, all except your boat. He was like, yeah, I'm sorry. So 2 weeks later, hey, you remember what happened last time, right? And he's like, oh, I got that fixed. I got the motor fixed. And I was like, I wanted to be certain that the thing was going to start, because it took joy away from the trip to worry about it. But he told me that he got it fixed. So we went fishing again. We get to the thing, back it down in there again. And sure enough, this time it starts right up. And I was like, man, he did get this fixed, because I was worried. He's one of those mechanics that thinks he's a mechanic, but he's not really a good mechanic. And when I asked him who fixed it, he said that he fixed it. So I was a little worried about it, but things started right back up. We went to the same place because we had caught fish from the same place. Got in the boat, motor ran fine, stopped, and I was like, hey, I want you to start the motor again. I just wanted to see it start up again. So we stopped. He starts it back up, man, purring just like a motor cat. And we fished, had a good fishing day. We're done. And we go to head back around lunchtime again. Just tries to start it, and the thing wouldn't start. The darn thing wouldn't start. So he starts trying and trying and trying, and it won't start. And I was like, man, we're going to have to troll back again. And I said, I thought you fixed it. And he said, I thought I fixed it too. And I was like, this ain't. So we go to get the trolling motor, and trolling motors run on a battery. So we put the trolling motor in the water, and we start putting about 1 mile an hour back for the next 2 miles. And the battery starts to drain down on the trolling motor. So that one, this was a long time ago, so it had like fast and slow speed, and we were on fast, and then kind of, and then pretty soon we're going like negative 0.5, because the waves are blowing us back, and we're not. And I was like, now what are we going to do? And I was like, do you got any oars? I mean, we were desperate at this point. Do you have any oars? And he says, this is a motorboat. It doesn't need oars. And I thought, this ain't no stinking motorboat. We're motoring nowhere. We're motoring on a little Energizer battery that's not even keeping up with the wind right now. I was like, we need something. And in my mind, I remember thinking, we're going to have to lean over the side or go over to the bank or do something like that. And he says, I don't have any oars, but I've got some water skis. And I was thinking, why in the heck you got water skis? You ain't pulling anybody nowhere. But he had some water skis. So this is what we're doing. And go ahead and imagine this and let it scar you. I'm hanging over one side of the bow of the boat. He's hanging over the other side with a water ski as an oar. And we're trying to get back to the dock where we were at. And in my mind was not good things, were not pleasant thoughts. The fishing trip was no longer enjoyable. In fact, the joy that I had for the first several hours was completely erased. So we're doing it, and boats are going by, and you're so humiliated that you don't even want to look up, right? I don't know if you've ever been there, but I'm like just digging in. One motorboat that was a real motorboat get closer and closer and closer. And I was like, what are they doing? So they get close enough, and then they turn their motor off. And I thought, that's risky, because they don't know if it's going to start. But they turned it off, and he asked a question. He said, of course we had to look up because they were, pretty close to us. Is everything all right? And it was one of those times when I wished I knew sign language so I could tell him, no, it's not all right. Hey, dude, we're in a boat and we have water skis hanging over the side and we're oaring it. We're rowing it. No, everything's not all right. And I'm glad I didn't say this because it ended up this guy, his motor actually started. He turned it back on, threw us a rope, pulled us back to the thing. Now, and of course he did. A couple weeks later, he said, hey, you want to go fishing again? And I was like, heck no, I'll probably never go fishing with you again in my life. Because of the uncertainty, because I don't know. Yeah, I'll have a good couple hours, but after those good couple hours, if I don't know that your motorboat is going to start anymore, that takes the absolute joy. That changes everything. Certainty in a lot of areas changes everything. And you know that I had a truck at one point in my life that wasn't reliable when it was starting. So the starter was going out, and I didn't want to get another one at that time. And I would not drive far away because I wasn't certain that my truck was going to start back up. And if there's ever been an uncertain time in my life, it's now. And it's like that for a lot of us, because what is happening in our communities, what is happening in our state, in our nation, in the world is so different, and it has had such a profound effect in so many areas. There has never been a time that has been more uncertain than right now. And some of it doesn't have anything to do with the virus. I shared a few minutes ago, the community south of here, about an hour and a half, that was messed up and some of it destroyed by tornadoes. And just a short time before that, 2 hours west of here in the Crossville area and in Middle Tennessee area, came through, absolutely changed people's lives, and it changes them in a permanent way. Many of us, the certainty of our jobs has changed. I've never had a time where I've talked to more people and have had a sad heart for more people because their jobs have changed. They've taken cuts in their salary. Their jobs have changed, and that's a tough thing. Is so uncertain. We don't know what's going to happen, and economists are predicting all kinds of different things, and they're not all consistent, but it's still uncertain, and it's scary. Schools, who could have imagined? I mean, schools are one of the staples and certain factors of life, and some families now know more than ever right now that, wow, with schools not being certain, it totally changed everything. It disrupts things in life. For some, our health, and some of it may be related to what's going on right now, and some of it may not. But when our health is uncertain, to go outside and do something. And like you've talked to people, and maybe you've shared and processed all this kind of stuff, but I've seen people in lots of different perspectives, but really in two different kinds of groups, two different groups of people when they talk about circumstances, and they talk about uncertainties, and they talk about how it's affecting them. And I was really wondering, why are some people talk about it this way, and why do some people talk about it in another way? And I've asked this question, and this question for me kind of categorizes people. And it helps me, and you've probably saw this too. You may not have asked a question like this, but you've seen people who perceive the uncertainty and what's going to happen very differently. And this is the question that helps me determine how somebody's going to perceive it. Do you look at uncertainty only for the pain that it causes or the opportunities that it presents? So when I talk to, and I don't ask them like that, but that was the most concise way that I could come about. When I'm talking to someone, it helps me to understand where they're coming from, because just for the pain that it causes, and then other people see this time, see uncertainty for opportunities that it presents. So a question that may be helpful, or it's helpful to ask ourselves sometimes, is, do you see the pain of uncertainty only for the pain that it causes? I mean, we know it's hard, and we know that it's tough, and we know that it's scary, and we know that it changes plans, and we know that it can be uncomfortable, and we know that it can be life-changing. But do you see it only for that pain, or do you see it? And the answer to that question, do you see it for the opportunities that it presents, will help what that you have. We've talked for the last, and this message is kind of going to be another message that it's because there is uncertainty in a circumstance. That is a new way to say what we've been saying for a lot of weeks, but God is in the uncertain places. We've been talking about that a lot. Oftentimes we imagine when we get into a situation of uncertainty, when we're by ourselves, or our boss just said, hey, don't come into work today. We don't know when you're coming back. And that uncertainty hits you. We often can see, oh yeah, I can see God over there. I can see God over there with that person who still has a job. God is still blessing them. I can see God over there with that person whose boat is working and whose motor starts. I can see God over there, and there this is going on. See God in my situation right now. I am in such an uncertain situation that I can see God over there, but I don't see God over here. And Peter is a perfect example of someone, I can see God over there, but I don't see God right here with me. And sometimes it was all Peter's fault. Sometimes it was something dumb that he said or something that he did. Sometimes he created his own uncertainty. Sometimes we create our own uncertainty. But sometimes uncertainty is created by circumstances way beyond our control. And Peter is a Jesus follower who grew in his faith and who would look only at uncertainty for the pain and discomfort and changes in his life that it presented to him. But he grew and he changed to where he started looking at uncertainty, that was a place that God also inhabited, and he could see God there. So we're going to look at Peter for a few minutes this morning. We're going to look specifically at one circumstance that was crazy uncertain, and then we're going to look at the end of Peter's life when he actually wrote out for us, and he gives us some answers. He gives us some perspective if we want to have certainty in uncertain situations. So Peter was that fisherman. He was rough, and he had a mouth that sometimes got him into trouble. The first time that I see uncertainty hit his life in the Bible is when Jesus said, hey, Peter, I want you to leave everything. I want you to leave your career and your home. And you're not going to know what's going to happen. I just want you to follow me. Now, put yourself in that position in today's, hey, I want you to leave everything that you know, including the possibility of your family, but certainly your job and certainly your home and certainly your area that you live in, and I want you to follow me. And Peter did it. I don't know why. There was something about Jesus that was so charismatic, that was so that Jesus would invite people to follow him, and Peter was one. So he starts off his uncertain career by leaving everything that he did. He was fishing one night. His certainty was he was good at his trade. He made a living, and he probably made a pretty good living at fishing. And he fishes all night, and it was not a good night fishing. Jesus is there in the morning time, and he sees him on the lake. And Jesus says, hey, Peter, I know you're working right now. It's one of those disruptions in life that none of us like. It looks like you're really busy, Peter. It looks like you've been working all night long, and you haven't caught anything, and now you're cleaning up your stuff so it doesn't rot. But can you stop doing that for a minute and let me use your boat so that I can teach people? And again, there's something about Jesus that Peter recognizes, and he says, yes, Jesus, you can get in my boat. So Jesus starts teaching from his boat, and Peter's sitting there and thinking, wow, I don't know what he's thinking. But he's watching Jesus. Jesus gets done teaching. Now it's in the middle of the day when fish are not caught. And Jesus says, hey, Peter, let's go fishing. And again, the uncertainty of the situation is enormous. Hey, Jesus, I don't know if you know about fishing, but you don't catch fish right now. And again, he would be uncertain, but there was something about Jesus that compelled him to listen, and he learned another lesson, that even in uncertainty, even fishing in the, when you're with Jesus, that changes everything. And Jesus can be in uncertain situations, and sometimes you don't recognize it, but the certainty changes. Peter followed Jesus for a bunch of years, and he saw miracles, and he saw people get in trouble, and he got in trouble, and he got reprimanded. He spent the night out amongst the stars with Jesus. Through this whole time and through the end of his life, through the end of Jesus' life, we talked about that a little during the Easter season. That would have been probably the most uncertain week of Jesus' life and Peter's life. And Jesus would say things and Peter wouldn't understand, and Peter would still follow. Jesus and Peter were together when he was arrested. And that was such a scary, uncertain time. And Jesus had told Peter, hey, Peter, they're going to arrest me, and you know how this is going to play out. It was so uncertain. Peter was so bold that when the guards came forward, he drew his sword and he tried to kill the guards. He tried to stop the arresting. And then Peter it was so uncertain and so scary, Peter ran away. He was probably the first disciple to leave and to run away. It was such an uncertain time. In Acts, there's an account of Peter, and this is one, besides that last week of his life, this is one specific account of Peter and one of his main idea of the message, but it helps us to realize just how uncertain Peter's life was, because I think if we compared our uncertainty to Peter's, and we'll be able to do that in a minute, that his is going to trump ours. His uncertainty, he had a much more uncertain life. So first in Acts chapter 12, verses 1 through 6. King Herod was that vicious guy who had babies killed and who had his family killed. Just a barbarian. He was a murderer. King Herod was in charge, began to persecute some members of the church. So this was at one of the time in church history, at the very beginning in early church history. He had James, the brother of John, put to death by the sword. So there's this real uncertain, scary time. In fact, this is the first time that we see in church history that the Roman government was actually killing the apostles. At one point, there was some respect to them, but this is the first apostle that we know of. So it's turning bad. When King Herod, who had him murdered, saw that this pleased the Jews. So he had James murdered by the sword, and the Jewish leaders were pleased. They were happy. When he saw that this pleased the Jews, he went ahead and had Peter arrested. So Peter knows that one of his best friends, his good friend, has been martyred. And he knows that King Herod is a barbarian and a murderer. And now he knows that Herod just sent the soldiers to come get him. After his arrest, so Peter's arrested, Peter was put in jail where he was handed over to be guarded by 4 groups of 4 soldiers each. So Herod was overly cautious. He had about 16 soldiers probably watching this one Peter. Herod planned to put him on trial in public after the Passover. See, Herod couldn't celebration going on. But after this, it was a Jewish law that you couldn't So he was going to wait until it was over, and he was letting people know, hey, because remember what motivated him. He saw that when he had somebody else put to death, John, it pleased were praying earnestly to God for him. The most uncertain times in Peter's life, maybe the most uncertain. He's in a jail, shackled, 16 other guards. He doesn't know who knows what. And we can ask ourselves that same question. Or the opportunities that it presented. Man, I love the church here. But the people of the church were praying earnestly. I can hear some of the people saying, man, focuses on the pain of the uncertainty. We had a good little run here, but man, things are never worse. Things have never been worse. We have no leadership. We don't know what our leaders are doing. What's Paul doing right now? Some people want to put the blame in someone else. When Peter, James is doing this and John is and all this, where's Paul at? But the church didn't just see the uncertainty for the pain that it was causing. The people of the church were praying earnestly. Isn't that the kind of people you want to hang out with? Man, when things are going uncertain in your life and you don't know what's happening, if you ever get thrown in jail, don't you want these kind of people to be praying for you and thinking about you? Man, this is an uncertain time. The night before, Herod was going to bring him out to the people. The very night before, Peter knew that he was going to be executed. Don't forget this circumstance. The night before, hours away, death row. The night before Herod was going to bring him out to the people, Peter was sleeping. Do you think he knows something about having peace in uncertain times? The night before he's going to be murdered, Peter was sleeping between two guards. Man, if somebody has something to tell me, to teach me about having peace and be able to get rest during uncertain times, some of us have some great uncertainty and some great disruptions. And it's not easy. But I hope you're not facing the uncertainty that Peter was facing this night. And Peter, from his young, pretty rough, gruff, sometimes rebellious, often outspoken self, he has learned to sleep, to have peace in uncertain times. Peter was sleeping between two guards. He was tied with two chains, and there were duty at the prison gate. Now, I'm not going to, you can go and read the rest of the story, and it gets more amazing. The point of this story, the reason why we're pulling it out, and sometimes people say, man, Jeff, why don't you finish your stories? I'm not finishing this story. It's in the Bible. You can go and read it for yourself. The point of using this story is this. This is great uncertainty, and it is a perfect example opportunities that it presents. And we can see people take different approaches. And then we can see Peter has earned the right to share something with me about having peace in uncertain times. And what I think Peter would say the antidote to uncertainty is this. I think Peter would say the antidote to uncertainty is certainty. And I can hear you saying or thinking, oh, wow, that's profound, Jeff. That's the antidote to the uncertainty of a motor of a boat starting or not starting is for it to start. And it makes sense in some areas. But I think, and I'll explain why Peter would say this, that the antidote to uncertainty is certainty. But that begs the question, what are you certain about? What do you have certainty in? Did Peter have certainty in his life? Did he have certainty in his safety? Was Peter able to sleep and have peace and have certainty because he knew tomorrow was going to be a better day? Do we have certainty? Does certainty come from our income? And I'm not saying that income is not important, because obviously it is. It's not only important, it's necessary. But is that where our certainty lies? And if it does, when our income changes or we lose our income, we lose our certainty. Is our certainty in our health? If we lose our health or something happens, and we don't want that to happen to anyone. I don't want that to happen to you. I don't want that to happen to me. But we know that it happens. So should our certainty lie in our health? Again, not that something bad is going to happen, but it does. Our health changes sometimes. Do we want our peace? Do we want that uncertainty to change our lives? Is it in our plans? People's plans have changed a whole lot lately. All kinds of changing in plans. And that's a little bit easier than some of the other ones, because we know we can't have certainty in a lot of our plans. We still make plans, but if our plans change, it doesn't have to change our lives. And that means why I think that the antidote for uncertainty, for uncertain times, and the feelings that it brings is certainty. And so now we're going to go into the book 1 Peter. And this is Peter at the end of his life, and he's writing stuff down. Actually, he's probably not writing it down. Peter may not, a lot of Bible scholars don't think that Peter could even read and write. He probably said, hey, whoever he was talking to, maybe Mark. And he said, hey, Mark, write this down. This is what happened. This is how it happened. Write that down for me. So Peter, towards the end of his life, and he had, don't forget all of those experiences that he had. He says this, blessed is God, is the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. I've been with this guy, Jesus, and Jesus told me that if I've seen him, I've seen God, and he's amazing. He is blessed. Who, according to the abundance, this resource pool that doesn't run out. Man, that's something that we can't understand, because all of the resources that are important to us, I think this is true. Let me say it differently. For most of us, most all of our important resources are not, they're not limitless. We know that our time, and we know that our energy, and we know that our money, and we know that some of those things that are important, they run out. But Peter's saying, because his abundance of resources are never going to run out, according to the abundance of his kindness. This Jesus was kind, and his God, his dad God, is kind and is good. Now, this is where it gets a little weird. I used a translation called the Young's Literal Translation, which I don't usually use on Sunday morning. I study from it, but I don't. The meaning of this word, we need to use it. Because according to the abundance of his kindness, did beget, did bring into existence, did birth. So a mother and a father beget a child. It comes from them. So God's kindness, it begat, it came from him, did beget us again to a living hope. So I'm going to read that again, because that's really choppy, and if you just read it, it's a little bit hard to understand. Who, according to the abundance, this unlimited of his kindness, he did birth in you, he did beget, he did create in you a living hope. And if Peter was going to say, hey, what can we be? Peter's certainty wasn't in anything else, but Peter said, there's this God who is blessed and he's amazing, and he birthed in us, he birthed in you a living hope, a hope that would be certain. And he goes on to tell why this living hope is make a difference again of Jesus Christ out of the dead. So you want to know why this living hope, this living hope changes everything? Because I've been with Jesus and I've seen Jesus and I've seen him killed and put into a grave. And then back to me later. And if this Jesus and this God has power over life or death, there is not one uncertain circumstance that he can't handle. You talk about uncertainty. Let me tell you about the day when I saw Jesus on the cross and the day that Jesus was in a tomb and none of us knew what was going on. And we thought that God was over there, but all along, he was right here with us. And God can beget. Because he has all the power. He has power over life and death, and he has power over everything. And we saw that through the rising again of Jesus Christ out of the dead. If God has power over life and death, then he has power over this uncertain circumstance. And this is probably my favorite part of the verse, the last part of the verse, when Peter says, hey, I know hope that's not going to die. And he says, here's the benefit to an inheritance, something that this Jesus blessed and good is going to give you. He already owns it, and he's going to give it to you. To an inheritance that's incorruptible. It doesn't change. Circumstances don't change it. Rust doesn't change it. Thieves don't change it. Some kind of acid doesn't change it. Nothing can break it down. It's incorruptible and it's undefiled. It's not going to get polluted. It's not going to lose its shine. God has blessed you with an inheritance, and you are going to get incorruptible and undefiled and even unfading. Man, blessed God who begat, who birthed in you this living hope has an inheritance. He's going to bless you with something and unfading, reserved in heaven for you. And Peter would tell us his living hope was in the very person of Jesus Christ. See, to Peter, living hope equaled Jesus, because Jesus was raised from the dead. He showed his power over life and death. And he promised them blessings after blessing. And Peter saw Jesus in uncertain circumstances most of the days that he followed him. So, in this uncertain time, and the title of the message was a little misleading, and I was purposeful about that. I did that intentionally. The loss of certainty. And the reason why it's a little misleading is because most things in our life are not certain. In most things in life that you think you have some certainty, you have certainty. The antidote for uncertainty is to be certain. And certainty comes from a living hope. I know because I've lived through it. And I would much rather have a living, vibrant hope than a dead hope. And that comes from knowing that God is all powerful and all loving. And he's going to bless you. And no matter what happens circumstantially on this planet, the follower of Jesus Christ has been promised certainty over uncertainty. an inheritance that is amazing, beyond our imagination, and it awaits for us. And nothing can take that away. So as we continue to navigate, and man, it's exciting because things are changing in our communities and with some of the restrictions and things. Hopefully we'll continue to have less restrictions and the virus will stay down. But it's still uncertain for some people and some jobs and things like that. So no matter where it goes, even with things looking up, the question I think we can ask ourselves that will help is, do we look at uncertainty only for the pain that it causes, but for the opportunities it presents? And it's going to present some opportunities. What are some opportunities that you can do and that I can do and that the church can do? What Peter would share, that the antidote to certainty, the antidote for uncertainty is certainty, and it's in the living hope with Jesus. And that's the message during this time. Next week, we're going to kind of change gears. It's the first Sunday that we're going to kind of move away, or I'm teaching next Sunday, moving away from the message that just is applicable during this time, and we're going to get into a memorial message. And then in 2 weeks, we're going to get into the When Pigs Fly series that has to do with miracles. So we're excited about that. Thank you so much for joining. This afternoon, you'll get an email from me with the update, and we'll have some plans, so I'm excited about that. Have a great rest of the Sunday afternoon. Bye-bye.